This is the classic paradox known as the liar's paradox. If a man says, "I'm lying," if he's telling the truth, then he's lying, which means he's telling the truth, which means he's lying, which means he's telling the truth, and so on and so on. In this video, we will talk about paradox and oxymoron, about overstatement and understatement, and then we will dig into the three different kinds of irony. We'll start with paradox. A paradox is a contradiction which is nevertheless true. Here's a better illustration of a paradoxical situation. It's one of the Aesop's fables, and it's called The Man and the Satyr. Once upon a time, on a bitter winter's night, a lost man stumbled through the dark forest. A satyr, a creature of the woods, found him and offered him shelter for the night, and guidance out of the woods at dawn. As they walked to the satyr's home, the man blew warm air onto his numb hands to ease the cold. "Why do you do that?" asked the satyr. "Well, my hands are frozen," the man replied, "and my breath warms them." They reached the satyr's cozy dwelling, and the satyr served hot porridge. The man, fearing it was too hot, blew on it. The satyr, annoyed, asked, "What's that for?" "The porridge is scalding," the man said, "and my breath cools it." "Leave," the satyr said. "I want nothing to do with one who blows hot and cold with the same breath." And so the man was forced to venture back to the cold forest, and was left to ponder the satyr's wisdom. It appears to be a contradiction to blow both hot and cold from your mouth, but it is nevertheless true, so it's a paradox. An oxymoron is a condensed paradox. They're so condensed that a lot of the time they're just two words. The classic example is jumbo shrimp. Jumbo means big and shrimp means small. It means you have a big small. It appears to be a contradiction, but it's not, because shrimp here does not mean small. It means that hideous-looking sea bug that tastes delicious with warm butter and garlic. Later, you can go online and find hundreds of examples of oxymoron. Here are just a few to keep you going until then. Overstatement and understatement are more or less opposites. Another name for overstatement is hyperbole. It's a figure of speech in which exaggeration is used for emphasis or to create a strong impression. The definition I like is exaggeration in the service of truth. This eliminates the kind of exaggeration that's essentially a lie, the kind I do when I come back from fishing. Here are two examples of overstatement. "I've told you a million times to clean your room, and the suitcase weighed a ton." Understatement is to say less than what one means. Imagine a woman who wakes up late and doesn't have time to do her hair, which is in complete chaos. It's sticking out in all directions. Some sections are flat while others are voluminous. She's late for work because her car breaks down, and she has to walk the rest of the way. And then a passenger bus hits a massive puddle and drenches her from head to foot in dirty water. She gets to work, steps into a meeting that she's late for, and in response to the stares of her boss and all her colleagues, she says, "Bad hair day." That's understatement. And now for irony. Irony always involves a discrepancy. What's a discrepancy? Imagine this scenario. Your mother calls you from the kitchen and asks you to run to the store and get her a cup of cream. "And please don't dawdle," she says as she hurriedly passes you a 20. You get to the store and you find that cup of cream and you buy it. At my local store, it costs $3.29. You rush home and proudly place the cream on the counter along with a $10 bill, and you start heading back to your room. Your mother says, "Wait a minute." She's noticed a discrepancy. She expected a little more than $16 and change, and you've only put 10 on the counter. There's a discrepancy of about $6. A discrepancy is when things don't line up. So irony always involves a discrepancy. There are three different kinds of irony. The first one we'll talk about is verbal irony. Verbal irony is when there's a discrepancy between what is said and what is meant. It's when someone says the opposite of what they mean. That's when Eugene walks into the classroom and he's done something different with his hair, and Alfred says, "Nice hair." And he says it in such a way as to communicate that he thinks Eugene's hair is stupid. You are familiar with this kind of irony. You might say, "Hey, that's sarcasm." The term sarcasm is derived from this Greek word. It means to tear the flesh like a dog. Sarcasm is a form of verbal irony. You say the opposite of what you mean in order to be nasty. A lot of verbal irony is sarcastic, but not all of it. For example, if a girl walks in drenched from a torrential downpour and she says, "What a lovely day we're having," that's verbal irony as well. Irony of situation, or situational irony, is when there's a discrepancy between what is expected to happen and what actually happens. So when I was a kid in Alberta, I heard a story about a rancher who had a problem with coyotes on his land. He captured one of the coyotes. How did he do this? Well, my father told me about one method using a 2x2 and some barbed wire, but that's not the point of this story. Now, this rancher was a clever guy. He figured that if he shot the coyote that he had, there'd still be the rest of the coyote family down safe in the den. So he came up with a new plan. He drove back to his barn and he got some duct tape and a stick of dynamite. And then he taped the dynamite to the coyote and he lit it, knowing full well that the freed coyote would immediately race down into the den. When he released the coyote, it ran under his brand new pickup truck. Did you laugh? Not a ha-ha laugh, but a laugh. That's the kind of laugh you often laugh when you've come across situational irony. Here's a more literary example. The story, The Gift of the Magi by O. Henry, it has situational irony in it. There's this poor couple and they want to do something special for each other for Christmas. So the husband decides to pawn his valuable gold watch to purchase a set of combs for his wife. And the wife, well, she sells her beautiful long brown hair to get a chain for her husband's watch. That's situational irony. So there's this song by Alanis Morrissett. She's Canadian, you know. The song is called Ironic. Here's the first verse. An old man turned 98. He won the lottery and died the next day. It's a black fly in your Chardonnay. It's a death row pardon 2 minutes too late. Isn't it ironic, don't you think? The whole song is full of examples like these. And the thing is, none of these are ironies. They're just unfortunate circumstances. But look at the last line of this verse again. It's not the only time this line shows up in the song. The speaker is asking you if you think it's ironic. I think that's a bit of a clue as to what's going on here. The irony of the ironic song is that it doesn't contain any irony. Now that's ironic. Dramatic irony is when there's a discrepancy between what a character or speaker thinks is true and what the audience knows to be true. Sometimes the character knows more than the audience, as in the case of Sherlock Holmes or Columbo. This is also dramatic irony, but it's not as common because we as an audience prefer to be in the know. For dramatic irony, we need some kind of a dramatic situation, and a character, and an audience. So here's an example of dramatic irony. In a horror movie, when the babysitter is snooping around the house and goes into the master bedroom and the audience knows that there is, in the closet, a guy wearing an old hockey mask and holding a meat cleaver. We, the movie audience, know about the killer and the babysitter doesn't have a clue. Here's a classier example. In Act 5, Scene 3 of William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, Romeo finds Juliet apparently lifeless in the tomb. We know she's faking it, with the help from this potion that conks her out, and only makes her look dead. But Romeo doesn't know that, and so he drinks some poison that he happens to have with him, and he dies. When Juliet awakes from her fake death, she sees Romeo dead, she makes herself really dead with his dagger. Dramatic irony. I hope that helps. Thank you, and we'll see you in class.